Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Educated Call Snap channel. How you doing? So today we're going to be talking about Corvus. My initial impressions is kind of hard to. I'm not sure whether I really want to recommend it. I end up leaning towards I'd rather recommend it than not recommend it. I do think you need Proxima, or you need to be able to afford Proxima, because it's really good synergy, and it'd be kind of sad to get Corvus and not be able to get the supplemental synergy card. So that is kind of a caveat here. Statistically, he's kind of average, but he does have some things going for him. And I do think he has a more challenging deck build requirement that might take more time than a day for the stats to really figure out what's good about him or not. But there's definitely some downsides we'll talk about. But overall, like, just though this was a difficult one, and Secondary has been releasing like more difficult cards to analyze, I do end up recommending this card. So I don't have an intro today. I didn't want to do it. I've been kind of having like a struggle. I don't know what to make in terms of content wise. This generally happens to me from time to time, but I'm just like at a lull. Definitely would appreciate some comments generally, and I'll see like which makes sense to pursue, things like that. But I'm doing well. Hope you guys are doing okay. That kind of thing. So we're gonna just go into Corvus. So Corvus is a 3 energy, 5 power card on review. Discard 2 cards, third game, 1 max energy. Max energy is really strong. I've talked about this card a lot. My biggest issues was that I didn't really see energy being necessary in traditional discard, but Hela has been very popular this month, just generally, and adding more discard tools does kind of give you more options to navigate a Hela themed deck. So Corvus kind of fits in that. So a lot of people have been trying more Hela in different strategies, whether it's with discard or just generic ramp, things like that. So Corvus can fit with that, as well as it being good in discard. You have ramp, of course, that can just take advantage of that 1 max energy. It does mean you have to build a little bit differently, but those are like the two main kind of archetypes that really bind this card together. Now, Proxima is not out, and I do think after next week, the stats for Corvus might be a lot better because a lot of people are going to be playing Proxima. So I'm kind of taking some of this stats with a grain of salt, but I do think it's still good to keep these stats in mind as we talk about this card. Now, I have said I do recommend this card. Now, I kind of went back and forth. So the main downside I would say for this card is you are playing decks that require Corvus. Like, it's the decks that play Corvus need a ramp tool. So fortunately, there's enough ramp tools that you can kind of make it consistent, right? You have like Wave, you have Electro, you have Corvus, things like that. So there are ways to, even Lockjaw, I would say, is kind of rampy. There are ways to get the big cards out of your deck into the board, but if you don't have those tools, it does feel pretty bad. And some decks with Corvus just look bad, or people like are trying things that don't work, and the stats reflect that. So I do think with the decks that are built well, have good synergies, Corvus stats are pretty good, and there's room to grow with Proxima coming out. So I think, as well as something that I don't always emphasize, is that when you are looking at this from a spotlight collection tier, you have to look at the spotlight. And Corvus has one of the best spotlights we've seen in a long time. It being next to Gladiator and X23 are both super premium cards that you want to have in your collection. So if you are missing Corvus plus another card, I'd say that isn't in itself good enough to recommend. And I would say like that's what makes this particular spotlight so appealing, is that the card quality is very, very high consistently throughout the 3 cards. So that is something to keep in mind. If you're missing any other card with Corvus, I would highly recommend getting this particular spotlight that way, right? But if you're looking like, do I spend 6,000 tokens, that kind of is decided. Like, can you spend 12,000 tokens with Proxima as well? Like, is that worth the investment? That's kind of a hard sell to me. can you like, do you want to spend 12k tokens for these? Like, maybe not, right? So but if you have spotlight keys, it's a lot easier to say, oh, I'll get this spotlight, maybe 6k on Proxima. That's more attainable to me, and you don't have to get Proxima. And if you're buying tokens, you can always wait and see what the stats say. So that one's a little bit easier, but definitely the spotlight here is super, super good. RAM cards just being powerful or useful is always something to have in your deck building toolbox. Like, just having access to ramp is always good. Ramp always like usually creates problematic cards, and it's a 3/5 ramp card. Like, it's different than Electra, right? Where Electra's a 3/2, you're like losing on rate. This is a 3/5 with upside. Obviously, you're paying the discard price, which in some circumstances, especially if you have like Proxima, that's not even a downside. So it's huge rate with potential upside. It has a lot of potential to be really good. And then, once Proxima comes out, I think the stats will really showcase like whether this is like a problematic or dominant card or not. So definitely interested to see. But overall, my opinion is like, I would recommend it, especially if you like discard cards or Hella decks or ramp decks, like those type of decks. I would say like this is a pretty safe bet that you're going to be using this pretty often. Now, let's get into the spotlights. So, right, this is the best spotlight of the month by far. It's not even close. The others are really not of this level, but you're next to Gladiator with X23, right? So Gladiator, I think, is also like a card that has shown how good it is over time, especially with like some of the, I thought like maybe 3/8 would be like not good enough, but definitely you kill a lot of cards, and a lot of people that are running Gladiator also have Shang-Chi anyway, so even if you miss, you just kill it with the Shang-Chi, so it's not even that bad. So generally, just a 3/8 is really, really good stats. Like, that's so strong, like without easy downside. And also being able to destroy a card just gives you information, right? Like, if you destroy specific like core cards of your deck list, then you they don't have that to play, things like that. Like, you could destroy a Shang-Chi on turn 3, and oh, my turn 4 later is free, because they don't have Shang-Chi, things like that. So there's actually just good benefits for running Gladiator, so definitely super strong. And X23 is also just the core discard piece. Just if you're playing Destroy, did I say discard? If you're playing Destroy, you're gonna be wanting X23. It does so much for you. So these two are just very, very good if you're missing them, or if you're missing both, definitely pick these up. So easy. I would say like Gladiator in itself and X23 by themselves are good enough to get, so you get the bonus on top. So yeah, easy slam dunk in terms of getting this card because of the spotlights it's next to. Now let's talk about some of the decks that people have been playing with Corvus. The first one is actually going to be not super standard, but I think it's pretty good. It's going to be a Thanos list. So the reason why I have Thanos in here is that Corvus does require a double discard, and the Thanos gives you a lot of like good plays. The stones you don't care about discarding, and then a lot of the stones give you draw to kind of make up for some of the discards. And then ramp, or what you're ramping to, is also very nice. Getting 5s or 6 earlier is very good, especially with Scar. You get to play out big cards, so it's not like the most common Corvus deck, but seems to be working pretty well. And if you have these cards, you do need Kyera, Corvus, Call, right, Scar. Like, these are kind of expensive, so there are some constraints, but it's kind of the idea here. It's one of the Corvus decks I think that is doing pretty well, even though it's not that popular. So the first one I wanted to mention. Second one we have is a Black Knight Hela. I'd say Hela is the most popular deck right now, like second only to like Destroy, I would say. And Hela has just been dominating the meta. Like, not, I wouldn't say, okay, dominating the meta is not right. Hela is very prevalent in the meta while being good, right? I wouldn't say it's dominating, but it's very common, and it's doing well for itself, especially with Black Knight pulling out these 412s or 420s. It's just hard to deal with. So Corvus being added on top of that just gives you more discard, more ramp, a little bit more safety in terms of what you want to do. There's no lockjaw on this particular version, so you got to ask yourself, is Corvus better than lockjaw? Sometimes, but obviously lockjaw has its own like benefits, so you have to kind of weigh the benefits and downsides. But it's the type of deck that you'll see a lot, I think, and it's doing well for itself, especially adding like ramp with Sunspot She-Hulk with the Corvus is just really good synergies, since you can take advantage of the extra energy. That's sometimes where you falter, where you can't really take full advantage of the energy. With Sunspot She-Hulk, you really can. Next up, we have just a more traditional discard version. What I like here is that you get to play Helicarrier, right? So this was something I was talking about with the Corvus. There's no Hellcow here, but with the Corvus, if you discard the Helicarrier first, you will fill your hand and discard again. So you end up being able to draw, which is sometimes some of the complaints with this card, where if you discard Helicarrier, you don't get to draw anymore. I would love to see maybe it fills your hand -1 or fills your hand to 6. Would that be more problematic? I don't know, but this seems to be working well. You have the Collector, so you do take advantage of Meek, Morbius, Collector to kind of gain value there, and then you have the Corvus ramp just for more discards. No Hellcow, but you're kind of replacing the Hellcow with Corvus and then hoping you have good things from the Helicarrier or the MODOK. So that's the idea there. Next up, we have a Lockjaw version. So this one gets to run Lockjaw and Corvus in here. This is generally a Hela list, though you're also running Apocalypse, but I would say there's a lot of discards here that you want to take advantage of. So this one just kind of mixes and matches, gives you two kind of ramp tools. I kind of view Lockjaw as a ramp tool in an essence, since you're trading a weaker card for something with more energy. So if you hit like Swarms, right? Swarms is probably the best thing to put into the Lockjaw here. You hit the Swarms, you can get these big cards to get out of there, while also having Corvus to play it normally if you go that direction. So a lot of flexibility here. Gambit is also really nice, since you can put it in the Lockjaw. Feel happy about that, so makes sense to me. Next up, we have, this is more of the traditional type of Corvus deck. I would say this is the most popular version of Corvus that people are testing, where you're adding it with Electro Ramp. So you have Electro Ramp, you have Corvus, so you have two types of ramps. I would say it's very similar to Wave, right? Because this was an Electro Wave, but now instead of playing Wave, you're playing Corvus. So instead of giving your opponent the chance to get a 6-drop, you're just discarding 2 and hoping that you have enough big things to play after you discard 2. So you do have the Hela, but it's not really the main centerpiece of this at all. But it is something to think about when you are discarding your cards. Maybe I'll top deck Hela or have Hela in my hand and play it. So definitely works here as a ramp tool. Its stats are definitely noticeably lower than some of the other decks I've showcased, but it is the most played, so that is in the case. But I also just think you are super reliant on your ramp tools, and it's also it has that issue of being very clear cut what you want to do. If you play the Electro, you know what's happening. If you play the Corvus, you kind of know what's happening as well. So that's kind of the main issues. And also there's not a lot of Sandman decks that are weak to Sandman. Not that much. There's not that much Beast bounce decks or anything like that. So the Sandman isn't feeling as problematic. So a lot of people, you just play Sandman, and you're okay. I was it doesn't change my lines, which just means that you played a 5/4 for no reason, right? So that's kind of the issues there, but still it's pretty good. It's its win rate isn't bad. It's just noticeably lower than some of the others. So just wanted to mention that. And then those are the decks. But yeah, I did have one more deck where I took it out because it was very similar to this deck. Just kind of had some small adjustments. Remember, those are Corvus. I do think to really have a good understanding of the card, you kind of have to wait till Proxima comes out, because it's the synergy with Proxima is too clean and too clear that after a week from now, like a lot of these decks are not going to be the same, right? Like you're going to have decks with Proxima in pretty much every single of these type of lists, and it's just going to feel like a different card because you have the chance of pulling 7 power out of nowhere, right? So that's why I think it's hard to not recommend this card, because its stats right now are good, not like crazy, but good, especially for the decks that are very tuned well. So it's hard to say, oh, skip this, and then Proxima comes out, and then the card is insane. And I'm like, oh, sorry, you shouldn't have skipped it. You know, like that's my current fear. So that's why I end up recommending it. But you can always wait for more information. That's what I usually do anyway. So this is the more information, to be fair. But yeah, that's what I've got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoy it. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I gotta figure out what I want to be doing though. So once again, feel free to recommend stuff, see if anything makes sense to me. Anyways, take care, bye-bye.
Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you tomorrow, snap. Your skills will be